So, um, Good morning, everyone, especially those of you in the UK. As introduced, my name is Sidney Muhangi, and I was based at the University of Strathclyde, currently at the Rhodes University in South Africa. And this fellowship really came at an opportune time when I was sort of transitioning from being a PhD scholar to doing the fellowship that I'm working on, which is the Times of a Just Transition. And it sort of set the scene for my postdoc. And as I'll mention later, I'll continue working on this to make sure that it maximizes the impact. So the title is The Art of Enhancing Farmers' Climate Adaptive Capacities to Climate. And I was looking at how we can leverage art-based approaches to build farmers' climate resilience. So for this particular presentation, to give you the outline, I'll first tell you why I was attracted to agriculture and specifically for smallholder farmers. And then I'll tell you briefly about the project case where it is based, then share with you what I've been working on at the University of Strathclyde concerning Arts-based methodologies. And then I'll briefly talk about how useful this fellowship was to me and my project, and also tell you what I look forward to regarding this project, how it's integrating into my work. So I was attracted to smallholder farming. In part, my background is in agriculture. That's my family background. And I've personally done some bit of farming. But I felt that smallholder farming is very necessary, especially in the context of Sub-Saharan Africa, because more than 23% of this subcontinent's GDP comes from agriculture, and more than 60% of the population is involved in some form of agriculture, and especially in smallholder farming. Interestingly, most of these, about 70%, live in rural areas, and 90% of these get their income from agriculture. So you can see how significant it is. But unfortunately, most of these smallholders depend on rain-fed agriculture, which means that they are disproportionately affected by the climate change-induced impacts such as drought, flooding, and pest and diseases compared to their counterparts, the large-scale farmers who have got resources and technologies to shield them against the brunt of climate change. So specifically for my project, I was looking at an area called Alice, is in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa. And this area is located in the former Bantustan, in the former Transkei and Bantustan, which was under the apartheid government and the apartheid regime, segregated, and people are living in areas that are not as fertile as other areas. So this area faces recurrent droughts and is water stressed. And many people in this area are farmers, and agriculture is the source of income and food. During my PhD study, this area was one of the cases, and the findings from my study showed that there's still a skills and knowledge gap among smallholder farmers, emerging farmers, and extension officers who you call agricultural support officers. And one of the notable findings was that farmers are having a challenge with variability in planting seasons due to climate change. And because of the history of South Africa, and specifically in Black areas, The use of art-based methods such as storytelling, dance, and drama was widely used as part of political activism, and that's why I was inclined to explore how arts-based approaches could be useful in climate communication and education to build a climate resilience. So the aim was to contribute to attaining a just and transformative transition of smallholder farming in this area. And so some of the deliverables for my project, the first was to build a repository of stories from lived experiences of farmers concerning climate change, and also build a toolkit of visual aids and a planting calendar, as I mentioned, due to the changes in planting seasons, an actionable framework for skills development concerning climate resilience, as well as developing a journal that could be published, contributing to the body of knowledge within academia. So some of the art-based methodologies that I've been exploring with my mentor, Dr. Maria Sledmare, the first was an online zine. So the thinking behind this was it would be very useful to not rely on printing paper, but also create this online zine that can be written in local languages, that can be read widely, but also this thinking was behind the idea that the fact that there are learning platforms using socializing technologies such as WhatsApp, where farmers are interacting with other stakeholders and learning about sustainable methods of farming, which I thought this would be one way of having farmers get these materials, and extension officers also use this as a way of learning and supporting farmers within this area. So this will be, it's yet to be determined how often this will be done, but it's one way that we found farmers can resonate with the information they can read in their local languages, as well as getting support from extension workers using this kind of material. The other aspect that I was working on is a podcast. And I was working with Daniel at the Digital Art Studio at the University of Strathclyde, and I was learning sophisticated ways of doing a podcast, working with video, sound, and everything. So I found this is one way of capturing stories of farmers and extension officers on how they learn what they're going through concerning climate change and how they are navigating the challenges and some of the methods that they're using in their farming practices. So here the idea is to record short podcasts that can be shared on WhatsApp groups and other platforms that they're using, and also exploring the idea of partnering with a community radio so that this message can be shared widely within these communities. So the other concept that I was working on was a rainfall planting calendar. And as I mentioned, this was identified as a challenge for smallholder farmers. And the idea here is to identify the crops that do better in different seasons of the year so that farmers can understand which one can be planted in which season. But also, it would help to approximate the timings. And while at Strathclyde, I was working, farmers continue sending me voice notes and images of their plants and where they are. And because it takes some time to build this, getting different sets of data to mark when this happens about on crops, it is still under construction, and I'm working with farmers to make sure that we have this complete. So the other one that I was exploring is using creative writing and poetry. And because this is an area that has been that policies, there's a climate justice issue there. And so use of creative writing and poetry could be one way that would resonate with farmers and emerging farmers and other farming communities in the area to learn about climate change. And in Glasgow, I attended various exhibitions, visual art performances, and other events, trying to learn about how to present these voices using visual art. And the other that I led was an environmental humanities reading group at the Uni of Strathclyde, and I was impressed by different perspectives from the attendees and how they looked at creative writing and poetry and how these voices can be represented through these means to communicate and teach and learn about climate change to build the understanding and skills on how to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And so for me, I just briefly wanted to share how this fellowship was useful to me. Coming from a different background from most of the scholars, I found it was refreshing to learn from others within the fellowship, attending especially the lecture about phenology with Michelle Bastian was very useful, and she also talks about building planting calendars, and we've been in touch throughout. She's still helping me in this process. The seminars and discussions, I felt that they were very useful for me to think critically about what I'm doing and what I should continue doing that I could embed in my fellowship moving forward. The interdisciplinarity, which I mentioned, people from different fields, that was also adventurous part of it. I felt learning about people, learning about the history, learning about time and how it affects livelihoods was very useful for me. And also the stories that we got to hear from people from different areas were also inspiring, and they all were working in sort of in tandem with my project, and they were informing how my project. So what is happening next moving forward? As earlier mentioned, I'm working on a British Academy supported project, and I've been fortunate to now be partnering with the Yoma Africa, which is a digital marketplace for youth ideas. And we're working with young people who are emerging farmers to innovate climate resilient farming practices that can be done in this area where this project is based. And also working with a learning network for farmers, which is Water for Food Learning Network. And this is one way we're going to be sharing these tools with these people to learn more about climate resilience and also innovate new ways of farming to contribute to a just and transformative transition within the agriculture, especially for small smallholder farmers. Yeah, so finally, I really want to thank especially the Saxon British Council for the support they provided to make this possible. Dr. Maria and Dr. Charles at the Uni of Strathclyde and Daniel at the Digital Art Studio for the support they provided. Michelle, who I've been in touch with, and the entire team at the School of Humanities at Strathclyde for giving me space and access to the library and other resources that were very useful for me. So yeah, thank you very much. If there are any questions, they're also welcome.